had some food, some coffee, do another session. You're all ready to go now? Love to hear it. We had another session a while back also talking about academia and some folks from the schools. I know we got a broader consortium concept from academia as well. Again, near and dear to my heart. So really appreciate having you guys here. After the session, if you mind, please queue up your questions. Grill these guys, ask them questions, let's figure out what we can gain out of this. And of course, afterwards, now you know what they all look like, so you can go find them during breaks or in the parking lot afterwards if you're a certain version. But why don't we have you guys just all kind of introduce yourselves and start off, and then welcome.
Yeah, so us three together are Aproflow. I'm Dan Shields.
And Taylor Kendal.
Al Pisano.
So Aproflow, as we were hearing about earlier, higher education really has this problem. It's isolating, right? It's a silo where basically all we're there to do is to learn, right? But there's so much more that we'd like to be able to do in terms of exploring opportunities and getting some experience. So as soon as we're out, we can get immediately into the workforce. In fact, really want to think about out is not a thing. So we want to blur these lines. Really, that's what we're about, is blurring the lines between earning, learning, and living, right? So we'll describe what that looks like to us.
Great. So there are silos, and also it's with those silos, it's challenging to do things in the educational space. It's challenging to make those connections with industry and community. And we're really about connecting all of that, because we've all been in higher ed and industry for all of our careers, and it's really difficult to get initiatives going in any space, and more importantly, connecting those initiatives to what's important, what industry needs. In our case here, we're talking a little bit about blockchain, but emerging technologies in general, and that's what we're all about, trying to connect all of that so that this fluid nature or this flow to what we're doing. So right now we have, so right now we have at institutions, and like you said, if any of you saw the session from before, the panel from before, there are people, faculty at higher ed, that are doing amazing things and really trying to push the envelope. But for the most part, in higher education, the faculty either are too busy to really get involved in things that are more experiential, interdisciplinary. There are these silos there, so there's not often enough time to do that. So we see this kind of segment that we can connect to the faculty to try to help them connect to experiential learning, connect to projects that are meaningful for students, which then we will connect to industry. But also the administration too, at a high level, they don't always understand the impact of initiatives. They can't connect initiatives across departments, and even if they do, it's often just within the confines of their school. So we want to help bridge those gaps.
So we'll go real quick, and we're gonna kind of breeze through this. It's gonna feel fairly high level, but in 20 minutes, what can you do? So just giving students other opportunities to experience, whether it's blockchain or other technologies, new ways of sort of learning and navigating their educational pathway. I think we've all been through the traditional system of education in some way. There's better ways to do it. Giving them, other relevant opportunities, giving them opportunities to get connected into industry in some way through, externships, internships, that sort of thing. And then, just experiencing what it's like to live while you're in school and getting connected into networks of folks and exciting projects. Right now, there's a ton of exciting projects. You guys are all tied into some of those. So just giving students more access to experience what that's like while they're going through their formal education.
And then really, I think what this is all about, and why we're excited to be here at the Global Blockchain Summit in particular, is getting industry involved in this, right? So right now, when we talk about that isolation, primarily that seems to be between the educational institutions and those who want to hire out of this now new emergent job force, right? So if we can get people involved here who have the trade skills, the soft skills, right, to bring that into the student's experience and arm them and give them some of this experience that's now relevant toward these entry-level jobs. This is what we're really after. And so for this, we're envisioning effectively a partnership with industry such that we can have apprenticeship-like models happening. Models, something like along the lines of an externship, so to speak. So students are already learning, they already actively have a lot of support and most of their overhead taken care of. So with very little of the effort that's required to help inject some of this experiential learning, we get a huge amount of value. So it's a way for everyone to really gain by working together. We can also work, and I think it was mentioned in the panel earlier, for R&D initiatives. This is a fantastic way to get some of the most creative minds out there, the youth here, thinking about hard problems that otherwise you might not want to spend the time and effort in-house doing. So this is a great way to pilot and help everyone really succeed together. And then in general, we hope that some of them will describe this a little bit later, the flow that we're creating is not only just for creating jobs, but also for creating great ideas that should become their own companies. So this is a great way to not only get industry that's already established started, but new startups really driving the whole technology forward.
So this is a little more apropos within the flow to some of my work recently, and just giving a sort of broad landscape of what's happening at a sort of higher national level. There's certainly a ton of momentum and projects evolving across the country. Some of these you might be familiar with. Worked a little bit with the Department of Education. They are actively sort of trying to shape policy around like what does it look like to offer students some of these sorts of opportunities around this sort of technology. The CLR, this is a term that I think we'll hear more and more, building out sort of comprehensive learner records or student passports where they can sort of fluidly move between learning opportunities and institutions. We tied into this Hyperledger EDU architecture, special interest group, specific, Hyperledger and IBM looking directly.
We all are, we all have that strength, but I think it's important that we all collectively have this network and understanding of how these things work together, the synergy of that. I think that's what we bring collectively as a group.
Yeah, I touched on some of this sort of broader national work, but also have been like directly hands-on and like on-the-ground work within institutions here in Colorado for a long time, building out creative projects, offering support to faculty, doing all sorts of design work. So I think we're looking at like all these gray boxes. It feels egotistical to have our names here, but we represent sort of these nodes within this broader network that hopefully, obviously all of you are a part of, probably in some way within those groups. So the hope is that that network can help make this happen.
Because it isn't just us, right? We have a lot of people that are interested in this, both at the state level and also some of the institutions who are here already. We're partnering with some of the local events that we'd really like to get more involved with. So that really is something I think that we're proposing. This is what Apropos really wants to be, is creating a flow. So what we're actually envisioning is effectively 3 key events that are all linked together around mentorship and apprenticeship-like programs. But these 3 events, I don't know if you guys have ever done a startup weekend. Anybody here done one of these with TechStart or anything? So this is a great way to get inspired, right? To test an idea. And really, I like to call it's an inception point, right? So I got this thing that I came up with, and it helps you dream. It's something to achieve, right? You want to see it come to reality. So we want to kick everything off with this idea, so it's yours, right? So problem and project-based learning can really be focused on that. And then at this event, it's a great place to network, to find these mentors. People can help you along the way to really take this idea into a full-fledged project. So then the midpoint of what we think this flow might look like is something like a major hackathon. Has anybody been to a hackathon before? Right? So this is a fantastic, in my view, too little time to do way too much, right? Kind of the inspiration behind all of this is we have 72 hours to meet people, to learn stuff, and to build something that I had no idea how to build like 5 hours ago, like now. So if we can unbox that in time, that's really what the rest of this program is trying to do. So the hackathon can be much more about just getting those connections more solidified, coming together in person potentially, but also really it's a sprint, right? It's like, okay, it's time, guys. You got to do this thing. Maybe it's your final for a semester, something along those lines. So this is, you go from idea to now a little bit of MVP, and you polish this up, And at the end of this program, we see something like an opportunity fair, as I think of that. So it's a science fair for all these projects that have now been worked on, as well as a career fair, right? People are looking to hire and looking to see what people are doing within this ecosystem. So in the end, Aproflow is really a funnel, right, for opportunity. It's to take you from just curious, just understanding what this might be, out into the real world immediately. So again, there's no silos right here. And you're learning, you're earning through these programs as well, and you're living, right? This is potentially going to become your life, whether it's in a startup or it's getting yourself a job. So that's kind of the idea, is we really want to see this all succeed, and we need a team. Like, us three aren't going to make this happen, right? It's the community and you guys. This is an open invitation to become involved. We really need wisdom in sharing this opportunity, this idea, to see, you know, if we're the right ones or anybody could be the right ones to see this kind of project come to life. And then we also are actively soliciting here at GBS for those people who would like to become mentors, who would like to help find now this entry-level positions. Come and talk to us, because we really like to help you get involved. Okay. So that's us. That's our club.
Questions are up, or I was going to say there's certainly universities represented here in the room, so know that there's opportunities to figure out how to fit in between those.
Yes. I have a quick question. Do you feel like there's any sort of compromising the educational process by having too much corporate kind of pilot programming partnership there? Is like, how do you guys seek to balance that out in this development?
I'm sure we could all speak to it. I mean, this is the part where that still feels siloed. Our hope is that ultimately companies are going to exist. They should be a fluid part of living in the world and learning in the world. Like, so, yeah, I mean, there's, you know, I think that there does need to be active.
You want the recruitment piece and stuff like that, but you don't want Oracle running folder, right?
Yeah.
So I think that my answer to that is there's two real terms of your project and problem-based learning, where one is kind of bottom-up, that you're working on something that's like that inspiration, that inception point. One is more top-down. It's just somebody's giving you a challenge and you should achieve it. So we can see both. Where and this is I think where we have to have the good community here, is that the expectations are set such that it's not just like company R&D mode, unless you want it to be, right? And that can be much more of a top-down view. So both can coexist.
Yeah, and I think at the university level, you're always going to, the interest is always going to be with what their needs are first. I think the idea here is just to start that dialogue, to understand that while university has to serve the needs of the students and faculty, they still have to be cognizant of what the end product needs to be, essentially. Not to literally say it's a product, but, and then vice versa, industry needs to be in that conversation, but they shouldn't influence everything within higher education.
Yeah, finding a checks and balances, like it should ultimately be that. Everyone can kind of keep each other in check in a perfect world. That's not always how it plays out, but that's the...
Other questions?
What's your guys' business model? Are you going to be a nonprofit, try to fundraise? What's your strategy there?
So there's a lot.
It's always
ways we can go. Yeah, I think that at least we're exploring a bunch of different options. The nonprofit, I think, is further in the future, but pursuing grants. So we talk about state and federal level. There's a lot of interest in supporting these kind of programs altruistically. But also then, one thing that's really hard on the industry side is HR, right, is recruitment. So this, I think, is a much more equitable way, and potentially what you could view it as this externship is a very much of a long-term, long-form interview, right? You're also able to do some of this R&D a little bit. So I know there's a lot of interest there. So partnering with them, as well as to begin with, I think it's very much piloted around core curriculum that's being developed here at Colorado institutions. But it doesn't have to just be for students either. I think that longer term, we're also very interested in getting professional development, people who want a career shift, get in on these projects. How cool would it be as a college student if you're on a team with somebody who's like an industry vet but just doesn't do blockchain? But you can come up with a whole bunch of creative stuff and know how to write Solidity, and now you're with somebody who's got 20 years of work experience working on some startup idea. That's pretty cool.
But just to add to that, we're in this, it sounds altruistic, but for the greater good kind of thing. This is not we will, be for-profit with foundation just because of the logistics and the size of our team mainly to start, but we really are doing this because there's this really large need, and we want to make the experience better for students, which will in turn help the industry out.
And one quick piece, I look at it, the ways in which new, like Web3 is redefining governance and business models. There's now I think we hope that we can sort of follow suit in not being defined in the LLC box, because there's just going to be new ways of, and maybe that's too sort of utopian, idealistic, that could bite us, but we're let's leave it open and let's navigate and be a part of this flow as this technology evolves, because there's just going to be new ways of these sorts of things evolving.
And part of that is what Dan mentioned, we want others to be involved, and we want that open sort of organizational flow or chart, because we want to have other people involved. And
we've thrown out DAOs, we've explored every, what are we? And we're we're fluid right now. We're building the flow.
Yeah. Question in the back?
You kind of answered it, I think. My skeptic view of the world is that companies outsource their hiring to the credentialing aspect of a university, right? So you use this known institution to prevent you from having to spend money and time actually vetting clients, right? Or vetting employees. And so it sounds like that's a bit what you're moving into, is this space about that you're moving outside of that standard formula that we've been doing for a long time. But then what is your kind of pitch to the HR manager about how you're replacing this credentialed institution for?
Yeah. Well, at least to begin with, it's not at all a replacement. It's an enhancement, right? So for a little bit of sweat equity as a company, you put in some time to basically get to know and to help the people you potentially would like to hire, as well as the program at large, right? So this mentorship, as well as potentially coming in for a meetup that we can do, hosted workshops to download some of the soft skills, trade skills that you might have. So it's very low cost on your end for time and energy, because what we're pointing out is this isn't so we can make a bunch of money, it's so that we can provide everyone the chance to make a lot of opportunity, right? So that would be our pitch, is the nonprofit arm, this is not what we're pursuing, it's just to try and help make these bridges easier.
We have time for one more question.
I have one more question. So the concept for me that I thought was kind of cool was you're talking about the life-wide learning. And so, like you're saying, you have an industry vet come to work with a bunch of 20-year-old kids that are in college, and everybody's working together on a project. I mean, I'm a grown-up, I'm going through continued education stuff right now, and I'm sort of active in the space from a cryptocurrency standpoint, but I'm taking other courses and stuff like that. So part of this is going to be that, hey, we want to get people certificates, and we want to give people the sort of non-institutional stuff, so that I can get a certificate from Boulder or ASU or whatever. Is that kind of part of it?
Let's chat after. I want to point you to 5 or 6 really cool projects right now going on. I mean, these things are in place, and I see no other path forward, as a country, other than
because we all have to evolve, right? I mean, realistically, all this other stuff is going to get tossed away, all these other jobs and stuff like that. So if people are, plastic enough mentally to be flexible, and then they get
I think obviously the system and the policy, that's going to be slow to catch up, but those that want to really start pushing down that road of redefining how skilling and upskilling and credentialing and all that plays into just living and learning, 5-10 years from now is going to be really interesting. But let's chat after that.
Yeah, and there have been a lot of conversations within our circles in that regard. We've talked about it maybe phase 2 or 3, getting more deeply involved in that part of it too.
Cool, thanks guys.
We've only got a few of these, but
Feel free to.
Yeah, you guys are available for Q&A, so come on up, we got 10 minutes before the